So before I got my camera, I would see these star pictures on Instagram. And I used to think that only really professional photographers could do it and that it required a really expensive, nice camera and a bunch of equipment. And what I found out when I got my camera was, first of all, it doesn't take a lot of skill and it doesn't take a super expensive camera. So I'm gonna show you how you can do it with a camera you may have laying around the house and just something to keep it steady. So I've got an old Canon. This was my sister's first camera. And I've got a cheap tripod. This is just one of those flexible ones. You can just flex it around whichever way you want. It just mounts to pretty much any camera. You can get these at like Walmart or Amazon really cheap. Super simple. It's just an older camera, cheap tripod, and that's all you need. But there are a number of settings you're gonna need to be able to adjust in the camera in order to pull off these kinds of photos. So I'm gonna turn on the camera. Wow, this is different than mine. All right, so first thing you're gonna need to be able to adjust is your shutter speed. This is super important. So what makes a long exposure photo is the fact that instead of the shutter opening and closing really fast, it's opening and staying open and allowing all that light to come in, and then it's closing. And that way it can take in more light, and that's how you can see the stars in the photo. I can adjust my shutter speed by using this little knob right up here. I'm gonna adjust it down to 15 seconds. So I don't know if you can see that. It's adjusted down to 15 seconds. Then I'm gonna adjust my ISO over to about 3200. Also, your aperture needs to be as low as it can go. And the other thing you want to be able to adjust is your timer. So when you hit the shutter on your camera, it's shaking the camera, and you cannot have that in long exposure photos. So what you want to do is go over to your timer, and I'm going to set mine to 2 seconds. That way I can hit the shutter, and then my hand will be gone 2 seconds later, and then it'll start taking the photo. So the camera won't move at all as long as I've got it set on the tripod. So the 4 things you need to be able to adjust are your shutter speed, adjust it down to about 15 seconds. That's gonna allow the shutter to be open for a long time, capture more light. Then your aperture, have that as low as it can go. That means it's gonna have a bigger hole in the lens. It's gonna be able to let more light in. Once again, it's dark. You want as much light as you can get, basically. And then you want your ISO to be about 3200. Sometimes I can do 1600, but it just depends. You have to play with it. The ISO is the sensitivity of your sensor. So you don't want that too high, you don't want it too low. So get that about 3200, see how that does. And then the other thing is the timer. You want to set the timer so that you can hit the shutter and then you take your hand off and let it do its thing without you touching it and shaking it. If your camera doesn't have internal timer settings, then there's a way to get around that. And it's with one of these cheap remotes. And what this does, you just plug it into the side of your camera, and then you hit the button and it takes a picture for you. So that way you're not touching the camera. And these things are cheap. I can try to link one to Amazon for you in the description. This one actually came with my camera. So if it came with your camera, that's great. You can just do this. You don't have to mess with the timer settings. But I just want to give you more options in case you don't have those settings in your camera. So we'll see how that does, and I'll see you once the sun goes down. All right, so it's about 7 o'clock. We're heading back out. We've got the camera, we've got the tripod, and we're gonna see what we can get. So I've got the camera set up on the tripod here, as you can see. What I'm about to do, I already went over the settings with you, so I'm not gonna go over that again. What I'm about to do is look on that screen and find a star. Now, you gotta point it towards probably the brightest star in the sky to be able to do this, but you point it towards a star, you can see the star, and then you pull focus until that star is the smallest. So I'm about to do that and then see what we get. So once you find your focus and get a focus that you like and the stars look nice and crisp, just play around with it. Point it different directions, point it at the Big Dipper, point it at Orion, and just see what you can get with your camera. So hope you like this video. Hope it explained it a little bit better. I know it's a little complicated, but thanks for watching. And if you hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. It helps me out, and I'll see you in the next video.